The European telecom sector faces tighter regulations and structural threats. Joining me today to discuss the sector outlook are James Croshaw and Alex Wish, analysts at S&P Capital IQ Equity Research. Alex, what are the main factors affecting revenues in the next 12 months?
Well, I think that the main factor this year, the last year and probably the next is the recession in Europe. And that is affecting not only the consumer behavior but also corporate expenditure on mobile services. That's the number one factor. Number two, we have also new technologies, and that's more of a longer term threat. And this is a structural threat to the sector in a way. The new technologies like WhatsApp or Skype, voice over IP, that allow customers to bypass traditional ways of communicating and basically reduces the amount that operators can monetize. And number three is also the regulatory threat. That's always a threat for the sector, including mobile termination rates.
James, speaking of regulation, what has been the impact so far and what is the possible future scenario?
Well, telecoms has always been a very heavily regulated sector, and the main area that the regulators have been tightening down on is, as Alex mentioned, mobile termination rates. That's the fees that the mobile operators charge other telcos to access their customers, to terminate a call with one of their customers. And those fees the regulator has set and has reduced them every year over the last 10 years. And they're now pretty much at a negligible level. It's no longer an important source of revenue or profit for the mobile operators. So any further cuts in mobile termination rates will really cease to have any impact. The other area where regulation has had an impact is roaming. That's when you go abroad and your mobile operator might charge very high fees for the phone calls you make abroad or for the data that you access when abroad. And again, the regulator has sought to limit those charges to avoid so-called bill shock, where consumers going on holiday, using their phone a little bit, coming home, suddenly finding they've got a bill for £200 or £300, and they hadn't been alerted to the risk of such a high bill. So regulation has come into place in the EU that prevents that sort of bill shock happening.
But are data revenue compensating in a way for the decline in voice revenue?
Well, to make a long story short, the real answer is no. The mobile service revenues for most European telecom operators is in decline. That said, the decline is being somewhat alleviated by the consumer demand for faster access to data. So what volumes of data, the demand for volume at fast speed is increasing exponentially. Now, is that reflected in revenues? Well, somewhat. The idea that the operators can defend some of the loss of voice from data is clear. There is demand for faster data access, but increasingly the way the operators are working is bundling packages. So the packages, the pricing power that they have on these packages has not increased significantly over the past couple of years. But given that the data offerings that they have, they are still able to promote very interesting propositions to the customer.
Given the recent wave of news on merger and acquisitions in this sector, what is your expectation for consolidation in telecoms?
Well, in Europe we see scope for a lot more disposals of small subsidiaries that are perhaps non-core to some of the larger telco groups. But we don't really anticipate any mega mergers. We think that the competition authorities wouldn't look kindly to see any more consolidation. They typically want to have 4 mobile operators, 4 networks in each country, or at least 4 operators with their own spectrum. The regulators are perhaps a little bit more prepared to see operators sharing networks as long as they're using separate spectrum. Spectrum is really the scarce resource in the sector rather than the actual physical infrastructure. So network sharing is another area where we could see, if you like, a form of consolidation without full mergers.
And what other type of cash conservation measures are operators taking?
Well, James was highlighting the network sharing agreements that we're seeing and we expect more of over the next couple of years. Another cash conservation measure that we have seen as well from operators is a reduction in the handset subsidies. You know, the European consumer was very used to replacing the handsets every year. And getting a new contract. Now what is happening now is that because of the recession, some customers are less keen on that. They want to keep costs down, and operators are increasingly offering alternative possibilities, including a SIM-only contract. And that means that operators are able to save on the subsidy that they traditionally gave on handsets.
Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.